This fall, I'm sharing a sermon series based on our principles, our 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. I began actually with the 7th one and did that at Ingathering, a little homily. And then I did the 1st and 2nd one, as you may remember if you were here. If not, we had the very great fortune of Kostya filming these and putting them on YouTube so you can go back and look at them later. Today, we're exploring the 5th one, the 5th principle. Now, you may wonder, why am I doing these out of order? It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. The 5th one, because it relates to democracy, I thought I should have that around election day, before election day, November. Of course, this is one of the odd numbered years, so not a lot's going on with elections this year, but it seems to start early for even next year, doesn't it? So we're doing the 5th principle this time. And I'd like you to join with me and share in reading this one together, first of all. Let's read this together. We affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. You know those 1961 principles that I showed you maybe about a month ago, the very early ones that we changed specifically, mainly because of gender problems, but other problems as well. Back in those very early principles, this was actually divided into 2 different ones, 2 separate principles, and then they decided to put them together. So you may wonder, why these 2 together? The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in society at large. When I've done these before, for some reason, I've just sort of skipped over that first part. And I've just jumped right on, let's go with democracy. Let's talk about democracy. So I thought maybe I better look at that first part too. That is part of our principle. And try to figure out why it's there with democracy. The right of conscience. So I began to explore that a little more, and of course found out something that I already knew but reinforced for me, that really for us, this idea of right of conscience, the right of us to determine, to think about what is right and wrong for ourselves, this is almost in our religious DNA. It's just a part of kind of who we come from as Unitarian Universalists. The Unitarians evolved from the Puritans and Pilgrims, from the Separatists. And here you see a picture of the Mayflower when the Pilgrims came over. They were separating from the Church of England. And why did they want to separate? Because they wanted the right of conscience to determine themselves things, not have a hierarchy for the Church of England telling them how they should believe and what they should think. Because they disagreed with a lot the Church of England was doing. So they wanted to separate and come together and have their own ideas, their own right of conscience. And when they came over, they did a Mayflower Compact, even about how they would even govern themselves. So not only were they separating from the Church of England, because they were going to be so far away, even though they would be colonists, they knew that they would have to have some way to get along as well. So the early Puritans, from that aspect of our parentage, we definitely got this idea that we need to be able to determine for ourselves and not have somebody tell us what is right or wrong. And even the Universalists, that side of our heritage, even though they did have a creed, the Universalists had a creed, they called it the Winchester Confession. They added what they called a Liberty Clause in 1899 because they felt this was necessary. We've got a creed, they said, but they added this, and this is what the Liberty Clause said. This nor any other precise form of words is required as a condition of fellowship. So even though the Universalists said, this is our creed, but you don't have to believe every word of it or go along with it to be one of us. So they were sort of stepping out there a little bit too and saying, you can think for yourselves. You have the right of conscience. Both of our religious heritage parents sort of passed that down to us and lifted up that we should be able to think for ourselves about right and wrong. So what is conscience? We usually say, well, my conscience is bothering me. What is that? And how is it formed? There's a lot written on this, and some of you that studied it know there is, so I can't get into all of that today, but I'm going to look at two aspects, just the religious and psychological, and just pick two groups, two points of focus. So for the religious, I decided to look at the Catechism of the Catholic Church, because our roots go back to the church and their ideas about this, and I found it to be very interesting. They do have something to say about the conscience. So if you look at the Catechism, number 795 says, conscience is man's, of course, you understand the concept that man is supposed to stand for humanity. Many of us later have pushed for wording that declares that as well, but we'll forgive them for that. Conscience is man's most secret core and his sanctuary. Secret core and sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depths. And then number 796 from their catechism says, conscience is a judgment of reason, your own reasoning powers, a judgment of reason by which the human person recognizes the moral quality of a concrete act. So it's using that power of reason to determine the moral quality. That's part of conscience. And then they even go on to say, this sort of surprised me because I thought, well, the Catholic Church is going to say you're conscious, you better listen, that's God telling you what to do. But here they're saying it's part of your moral reasoning, your reasoning about it. It's where you are alone with God. But then this says, conscience can remain in ignorance and make erroneous judgments. So this is from way back when the Catholic Church was saying, your conscience may say something to you, but that doesn't mean that it may not be an error. It can make erroneous judgments. Such ignorance and errors are not always free of guilt, the Catholic Church says. That's a church understanding of conscience. One church's understanding of conscience. So I thought about, let's look at psychology, and there are a lot of different folks as well that have spoken out about that. But probably the best known one, and the one that we think of most often, is Freud, because he's so well known. So Freud's ideas, as you may remember, he says within our personality, we have very different parts of our personality that are sort of in a struggle. We have the id, with our primal desires. This is your wild child. This is telling you what you want, what you gotta have. And then your ego, that is your grown-up self, your reason and self-control. And your superego. And the superego is what some people would refer to as your conscience. That is your quest for perfection, wanting to do things right. Your philosophical and spiritual ideas about what is right. The little angel sitting on your shoulder, in the cartoon. And the devil was on the other one always, right? And you're in the middle, you're the ego. So, in this case, for someone like me, the id says, I want chocolate. That's my id, my wild child. Last night there was a lot of chocolate to choose from. I did not go up and grab all the candy when you all busted it. I let the children and kids do that. But I did get a little bit of that chocolate cake. And then I have to admit that candy corn just really got to me. I should have left that alone. So the id says, I want chocolate. My superego says to me, my conscience, that angel on my shoulder says, uh-oh, Jane, remember, you're supposed to be watching what you eat, and you said you weren't going to eat a lot of sugar at all. Watch out. Don't be tempted by this just because it's here. So my ego did speak to me. Now then, my ego's in the middle. My ego is the part of me that weighed these things out. My adult, reasonable self said, it's a party. Gotta have a little, but I won't have a lot. So my ego figured it all out, and I did get a little, and I didn't get a lot. So I had these other sides of me, though, that were challenging me during the night. Did any of you feel those challenges? So you feel them too, many things. So we understand, we know it's there. We call it a conscience. We recognize it. We recognize that superego. Where does that come from? Why? How did we get that? What is that in that? Where did it come from? Well, of course, there's the old argument, is it nature? I love this picture with the nature versus nurture picture. Nature or nurture? Is it born with us? Did we evolve it? Did it come with us? Is it just already there? Or is it something we were taught? Well, most of us would probably agree that we evolved some aspects of conscience. If you look across humanity, there seems to be some things that are in common among human beings. We probably evolved empathy, as we talked about with another principle. That seems to be something that we, as mammals, sort of evolved and have within us as a capacity. We've probably evolved some ideas about reciprocity. Seems to be across humanity. So there may be some things that are things that are there, come with us. But if you look across cultures and across what lots of folks think of as right and wrong, you have to quickly say, a lot of this is not something we came with, obviously, because we have very different views, even not just across cultures, across families, across individuals, about what is right and what is wrong. So that must be not something that evolved for us as humans. It must be something that is taught to us, or that we accepted, or that's programmed into us. It must be nurture, not nature. And so then we have these things, what some folks call now in America is culture wars. And it's been going on for quite some time, and it's political as well as in our society. We have it even here in Statesboro, where somebody comes and takes down our flag because they think that's wrong. We put it up because we think it's right. That's a symbol of the culture wars going on there. And they think they are right just as much as we think we are right. Their conscience is telling them differently than what our conscience is telling us. So we have all these different views about right and wrong. And what do we do about it? Because we don't agree. We do not agree. We can talk our heads off sometimes. We do not agree. So we just see it differently sometimes. Hold up your fingers. I'm going to show you something. And tell me how many bars you see. Or you see it first. All right, I'm looking out there. Some people have 4 fingers up and some people have 3. And you are both right. And if you look at it long enough, you can see you are. You can even switch. Oh, now I see 4, now I see 3. Can you do it? Look at it. And some of you are saying, no, they're 4. How can anyone see 3? It's impossible. There are 4 bars. And others say the other. Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? Now, this is a simple illustration, but this is what happens with many things in society. We see them from such different viewpoints, with different glasses on, that we are firm about it. It's 4, no, it's 3, no, it's 4, no, it's 3. So what do? Because we can't agree. We can fight. We can fight, yes. Fight it out. And sadly, this is what we are still doing in a lot of our society. We still have wars because we can't agree in our nations. We fight things out. And it hasn't done much good. Now, sometimes the fight, if one dominates the other, it looks like peace because you quickly, if you have one group that's so dominant, then it will be peaceful for a while. But that doesn't necessarily make it right. Just because one group has more might is stronger. When my son John and Fred were growing up, they used to fight. And because they were just 1.5 years and were close in physical ability, that was kind of bad. If one can dominate, then you can say, okay, at least they won't hurt, one will dominate. But that's not what happened there. They would just fight and fight and fight. And I was afraid that they would really hurt each other. So if I had to go to the grocery store, I would always, one of you kind of come with me. Yeah, I can't leave, even though you're both old enough to leave at home. That's right, one of you come with me, and one of you can stay at home. I can't leave you together, because you will hurt each other badly, And so fighting, we don't think fighting is the best thing to do. Or I don't think it's the best thing to do. What else can we do? Well, some human beings develop various tools for figuring that out. And one of them that was developed, of course, back with ancient Greece was democracy. They said, you know what we could do? We could vote on it. We could raise our hands. They didn't let everybody vote, of course. But we can decide, and if we disagree, we can see who has the most votes and figure it out. So that has been a tool, democracy, that we have passed down through the ages and that many societies have lifted up. It did not come down, even though it's in our principles. Sometimes I don't think it should be because I think it's not quite perfect enough. But it did not come down with Moses from Mount Sinai or something like that. We, people from the ancient Greeks, decided this is a good tool. This is one good technique that might help us out so that we don't just fight it out. Now, a lot of folks have had lots to say about democracy. Some lift it up and some put it down. Here are just a few of these. I'll share with you some famous folks. S.S. Agnes Repplier says, democracy forever teases us with its contrast between its ideals and its realities, between its heroic possibilities and its sorry achievements. And it seems like we rock back and forth between those two. Sometimes we're saying, yay, look what democracy has brought us. And sometimes we say, dang, or something worse. You know? Australian social scientist Alex Carey says, the 20th century has been characterized by three great developments of great political importance. The growth of democracy, the growth of corporate power, and the growth of corporate propaganda as a means of protecting corporate power against democracy. I think we see that happening for sure. Newspaper editor M.L. Mencken said, democracy is only a dream. It should be put in the same category as Arcadia, Santa Claus, and heaven. We can lift it up all we want to, he says, but it's only a dream. He also said democracy is a pathetic belief in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance. And if you do have a lot of ignorant people voting, that's what this is what we get. Economic philosopher and writer Stuart Chase says, he thinks it's a bit differently. He says, democracy, as has been said of Christianity, has never really been tried. Unitarian, ? And third U.S. President Thomas Jefferson said, a democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. We've seen that happen sometimes. But then, of course, thankfully in the United States, we do have courts that are supposed to protect the rights of minorities. We hope. If the corporations didn't get in the way, right? Winston Churchill, though, said, this is a good quote, democracy is the worst form of government, except all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. So, it may not be ideal, but he said, it's probably other than the others, it's what we got. Our Unitarian friend Walt Whitman said, did you too, oh friends, suppose democracy was only for elections, for politics, and for a party name? I say democracy is only of use there that it may pass on and come to fruit and flower in the manners and the highest forms of interaction between people and their beliefs in religion, literature, colleges and schools, democracy in all public and private life. He's saying it's more of an attitude that we have and how we interact with others. It should be more than just a vote on election day. I like that. Also, I can't talk about democracy without quoting one of my heroes, John Dewey, who looks at it in almost a spiritual way. Says the task of democracy is forever that of creation of a freer and more humane experience in which all share and to which all contribute. Well, as I said before, I do lift it up as well, but I do see major problems with democracy. And here are three that I see with our American democracy. We also have democracy in this congregation and other places, but right now I'm just going to focus on three that I see with our American democracy. One is the dominance of capital in the capital. So I think it's getting worse and worse. How much money is making the difference. And this is made worse by the Supreme Court decision for Citizens United. Former President Jimmy Carter stated that what we now have with this, now that we have this, is an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery at every level of politics. So I'm a member of a couple of things that are groups that are trying to work toward changing this. We may have to have a constitutional amendment, I guess, but this is bad, folks. It's going to get worse if we don't change what money is doing with politics. It's going to, you can bribe everything then. Unless you can happen to get a bunch of rich people that are very good folks. Maybe. Also, the gerrymandering, I think, has become a very real problem. And I know it's been used sometimes for some positives. What is gerrymandering? In 1812, Governor Eldridge Gerry signed a bill that redistricted Massachusetts to benefit his party, which was then the Democratic Republican Party. It's no longer a party. One district looked like a salamander, and you can see it up here. And so the newspaper folks called it a gerrymander, named it after him. And that was picked up. And now anytime they do this, they call it gerrymandering. And of course, it has been done by both Democrats and Republicans. Both of them, when they've been in power, have redrawn the districts so that they will continue to be elected. It's a self-preservation thing they continue to do. But frankly, I think the Republicans have done a better job of it. It seems to me. But both of them do it. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but I do know it's a problem. The way with what you can do once you're in power to make sure that you stay in power. So the other thing, though, that I think that is the third huge problem is voter apathy. Now, of course, we also have a problem with folks not being able to sometimes to register to vote, or having problems voting because maybe they don't have the right identification. Those are also concerns I have. But a bigger concern of that is people just not voting. And we have a huge problem with that here in the United States. Less than half our eligible voters that could vote actually go and vote. They do a little more in national elections, but in between they don't. And the only time in a local election the voters come out to vote in states where the young folks come out is if the alcohol is on the... I'm not kidding. You watch it. That's the way it seems to be. And they don't realize they could actually, the young folks and the younger people in our town could take over this town. They really could. But if you don't go vote, you can't do it. So voter apathy, who cares, that's a huge concern. Now, recently, very recently, if you notice in the news, Canada had an election and had a big increase in the number of people that went to the polls for them. I'm hoping that's a good omen for us. Maybe some of that will trickle down, right? I'm hoping that idea of get to the polls will trickle down from Canada to us. This is another hero of mine, Parker Palmer. He's the founder of the Center for Courage and Renewal and is a world-renowned writer, speaker, and activist. He's also a religious educator. We used to read a lot of him when I was in seminary. He focuses on issues of education, community leadership, and a book he's written, his most recent book is called this, Healing the Heart of Democracy. And what he's looking at is a more heart kind of thing, not a head thing, but we've got to heal the heart of democracy. He says that what we see now, or what he sees, is how heartbroken we are over our failures. All of us. Whether you're liberal or conservative or in between, we feel pretty heartbroken over many things, many ways that our democracy has failed us. And he said that we could actually use that heartbrokenness as a bridge, that's something we have in common, as a bridge for healing. And he begins with a quote by Terry Tempest Williams entitled, that comes from her book called The Open Space of Democracy. She says, the human heart is the first home of democracy. The human heart. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole beings, not just our minds, and offer our attention rather than our opinions? I don't want to just read those words. I want you to think about it for a minute. I need to think about it. Can we really listen and not just jump in with our opinion? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up, ever trusting our fellow citizens to join with us in a determined pursuit of a living democracy? Don't get fatigued with it. Hang in there with it, she says. Now, Parker Palmer opens with that because he said that's his central idea. Can we do this? And he says to do this, to heal and have the heart be involved with this, we need 5 habits of the heart. You know how a habit is, though? A habit is something that you don't just do one time or learn in a book. You have to do it over and over and over again so that it becomes something you automatically do. So that I have to think and make myself floss my teeth when I'm not used to doing it. But if I do it enough, my teeth don't feel okay unless I floss my teeth. It becomes a natural part of what I have to do, what I want to do. Exercise in the morning. Now I've made that such a habit. I used to have to make myself want to do it. But now if I don't do it, I'm missing that. That's a habit I have. It's a habit. So he says we've got to have 5 habits of the heart. First of all is an understanding that we are all in this together. Every one of us. Now we Unitarian Universalists says, hey, we left a principle about that, the 7th one, the interdependent web of life. But we need to live like that too, knowing that every one of us is in this together. An understanding of that. An appreciation of the value of otherness. Sometimes we're tempted to say, oh, but since we're all in this together, we're all alike. And we should all just try to be alike. And aren't we all humanity? And then, Well, no, we're different. We're a good bit different in a lot of different ways. And what we are striving to do as Unitarian Universalists is sometimes lift that up and say, we're going to value that. We're going to let you be different than you. And say that's okay and value the otherness instead of hating the other. 3, an ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. That's something else that we don't seem to want to do. We know that we're pulled in different directions, so it's easier sometimes just to go one way or the other. You have an issue, and we end up being like enemies on these issues because we can't stand in the tension and realize that it's okay to be there. We're pulled to the poles a lot of times and end up so far in the extremes. That's what's happened with our American society. We got these very extremes there. We just pull to the poles. It's easier to be there sometimes than to stand in the tension. We have to be in the habit of being in that tension. A sense of personal voice and agency. That you can speak up and share. And if you can't do it, you can get an ally to do it for you. But you do have a personal voice and agency. And then a capacity to create community. It's too hard to do something by yourself. So that's why we need to create community of some kind. Now we're fortunate here. We have a little community of folks that we want to work together for some of these values, and we can do it better together in community than we can by ourselves. Sometimes our communities now that we're reaching out to work with others are online communities. And that's okay too, to try to make a difference. But you can do it better in community. So have the capacity to create those communities. I was thinking about this thing about conscience and then being able to go forth and do things. And I thought about how we learn so much by looking at computers about our minds. And I know with computers, they come with some things and we program other things into them, right? So I think with our conscience, we come with some things and we come to places like this to hopefully get some good programming. We teach our children hoping to have them have some good programming. We know they're going to get other kinds too. But then that's not enough. We have the right of conscience. We can understand and believe things. But we've got to have some community to make a difference. to move forward to that second part of our principle and use that tool of democracy. May not be a perfect tool, but so that we can use it in good, healthy ways. Let's share that principle one more time that has those two things. What do? We affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. So, all in favor? Say amen. Or blessed be. Thank you.